This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show on 97.3 ESPN with your host, Nick Costco. We're taking you up to the kickoff of Rutgers football. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Nick Costco.
Live here right outside SHI Stadium. College Football Countdown, the Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN. Nick Costco with you, and I say outside, I meant inside because I only say outside. I'm outside the press box. I'm next to the student broadcast, my former student radio station, WRSU at Rutgers. So, but it's a beautiful day out for college football. Rutgers taking on Minnesota, and we will take you up to the kickoff of that one beginning at 3:30 p.m. It's homecoming for the Scarlet Knights as they are wearing these new I shouldn't even say throwback uniforms because they're brand new uniforms just for today. They're special 1869 uniforms, long sleeve jerseys, these tan-ish pants, white helmets, and the old school R. And believe it or not, my undershirt is a long sleeve version of that jersey as well with the R, the 150 logo for 150 years of college football, and good old Adidas. Give them a plug a little bit too. But we'll lead you up to that kickoff, and we'll dive into Rutgers a little bit more with our good buddy James Kratch from NJ Advanced Media. We'll talk to him about the Rutgers football coaching search and how that's going and where they might go, whether it be Greg Schiano, Joe Moorhead, or somebody else. So we'll get his thoughts on that as well. We'll take a look at my top three games of the day here in this first segment. Of course, we got to remind you the picks are coming a little bit later. We are 14-10 on the season. It's the Royal We, baby. 14-10 on the year, 3-1 last week. So we will obviously pick the Rutgers game here today along with three others, including one that I'm going to be previewing in just a second. So a lot to get to in a short amount of time before we lead you up to Rutgers, Minnesota with Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, and Eric LeGrand on the call. So let's start out right now with some of the games that I am looking forward to tonight. I got to look at first numbers, and I don't do this often, but I'm looking at the Pac-12 because of all the upsets. Georgia going down, Florida on the brink of being upsetted earlier today. That game is still in progress. I'll get a score for you in a second. 20-17, South Carolina leads number 9 Florida right now in the early fourth quarter. Also Auburn 31-3 right now over Arkansas. Other scores, 49-14, Oklahoma over West Virginia. Wisconsin only 20-14 over Illinois on the road. Iowa leads Purdue 19-10. Clemson up 17-3 on Louisville. So you're all set with the scores from the early games right now. And so we'll look at Arizona State, number 17, at number 13, Utah. It's a Pac-12 South game. I like this one today because I think the loser is eliminated from playoff contention. We have not seen many Pac-12 teams make an impact on the college football playoff. None have made the national championship since Oregon did it in the inaugural college football playoff when they lost to Ohio State. That was back in the days of Marcus Mariota as a member of the Ducks. So I'm looking at two Pac-12 games right now, Arizona State at Utah, and number 12 Oregon, and number 25 Washington. That's in the Pac-12 North. And I think there's still a chance for the Pac-12 to get into the playoff here, only because teams are starting to lose. Obviously, Clemson's undefeated. I don't think they're going to get upset today by Louisville, despite that score right now, 17-3. Alabama's not going to lose until they play LSU or Auburn, if at all, and then they'll play the SEC championship game, which I think they'll beat either Georgia or Florida in the final anyway. So basically, I would say I'm still kind of locking in that Clemson and Alabama, in whichever order, they're going to get into the playoff, and we're going to just wait on the other two teams right now. Oklahoma's undefeated. They're currently number 5. I like where Oklahoma's at. As long as they win out and win the Big 12 title, they're going to get in undefeated because they are so good, obviously. LSU, we mentioned it before, they have moved up to number 2 this week. They were number 5 last week, so they push everybody else down. Clemson's 3. Ohio State in the Big 10 is 4. So right now, let's look at those rankings as we look at, and then I'll dive into why these Pac-12 games are important. Because Alabama, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Penn State, the top 7 all 6-0. And if the Pac-12 has any shot, number 12 Oregon could be their best bet at 5-1. Utah also 5-1. Don't discount Arizona State. They are 5-1. So right now, Arizona State, Utah, this is a playoff elimination game right now. The Pac-12 must have a one-loss champion at the worst. And that's, again, if they have a two-loss champion, their champion's not getting into the Final Four. So Arizona State, Utah, playoff elimination game here today. I love what Herm Edwards has done with the Sun Devils over in Tempe. I actually just watched that 24/7 special on HBO where they filed them for the whole week, game week. That was very interesting to watch. They edged out Washington State at home. So I think the losers out, the winner still has a shot, but they have to win out. No matter who wins the Pac-12, they must win out, and that's why it goes for Oregon at Washington. Washington's ranked 25th, but they are 5-2. I don't think they're getting it at all. So right now, you're 3 possible teams out of the Pac-12 to make the playoff: Arizona State and Utah, and Oregon. Arizona State and Utah, again, they play each other today. The loser is done. The winner still has a shot moving forward on the schedule. And I'm looking at, again, your best bet probably is Oregon just because they are number 12, and also you have Utah in the other division. And if I'm looking at Oregon's schedule right now, they have Washington today. And then they're home against Washington State on the 26th. Then they're at USC, home against Arizona, at Arizona State, home against Oregon State. So they do not play Utah in a cross-division game this year. So that could be your Pac-12 championship game. And and then Arizona State, again, this is where it becomes very interesting. Say Arizona State wins today. They do play Oregon later on. If those teams keep winning, one of them's going to have 2 losses by the time they play each other or after they play each other. Then if they just happen to rematch based on how the standings shake out in the Pac-12 title game, you better hope whoever won the first time wins again. Otherwise, no one from the Pac-12 is getting into the playoffs. So look out for those 2 games later tonight. Arizona State at Utah and Oregon at Washington. I will have the Arizona State-Utah game in my pick segment later in the show. Again, we're going to welcome James Kratch in after this first break. We're going to talk about the Rutgers coaching search. And that third game I wanted to look at here today, that's happening tonight. It's the biggest one today. And I don't know how you can point at any other game and say it's bigger than this one, but it's number 16 Michigan at number 7 Penn State. And basically this game is an eliminator as well. This game to me means whoever wins this is your only challenger to Ohio State, at least within that division. Because if Ohio State makes the Big Ten title game, they're in all likelihood going to face Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is the best team from that other division. Again, I don't know where Michigan lies at all. Jim Harbaugh has disappointed year in and year out by not being able to beat Ohio State, can't beat Michigan State at all. So this game is a big-time elimination game, and maybe Jim Harbaugh's job is on the line here. At Penn State, James Franklin has his team rolling. I didn't think they'd be this good. Again, this is your only challenger to Ohio State in that division. Whoever wins that game tonight, I hate picking against. I've been picking against Penn State for a while. I might have to go with them, and I picked them last week, and it happened to be a winner. So we might have to roll with them again here today. All right, we are going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, James Kratch of NJ Advanced Media will join us. We're going to dive into the Rutgers coaching search as they move along here, and they'll take on Minnesota. Kickoff at 3:30 today in the homecoming game. We'll send it out to Chris Carlin and Ray Lucas and Eric LeGrand in just a little bit. For now, keep it locked here. You're listening to the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show with Nick Costco on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Back here at SHI Stadium on the campus of Rutgers University. Nick Costco with you right here on the College Football Countdown to Kickoff show. Pleased to be joined now in person, sitting to my left, James Kratch of NJ Advanced Media, my good buddy, covering Rutgers football and all Rutgers athletics. We missed you the other week. There's some big breaking news down the field before the game a couple weeks ago.
Yes, I was scheduled to be on, and all hell kind of broke loose with Raheem Blackshear signing a red shirt atop Art Sikowski, Nunzio Campanelli's first game. But things are a little bit calmer here today.
I would say so. I took a look at the parking lot, actually. A little more filled up than weeks past, but that's to be expected. Homecoming alumni come back today, so I would think, based on your quick estimation, maybe a little bit of a better crowd today despite the record.
I could see. I think 20,000 is the number that you always kind of set each week for a Rutgers football game. I will say this: seen a lot of Minnesota fans around here. First time the Golden Gophers have ever come to Piscataway, and
it's probably a bucket list trip, right?
Obviously you go to New York, but I think also the Gophers being in the West, they don't come out to Maryland, to Penn State, to Rutgers very often. So this might be a situation where you see people make the trip. That might pad up the crowd a little bit. A little maroon in the crowd just because, hey, this is one of the rare times they get to make a relatively short trip to see the Gophers.
We'll put the game aside for now. That one coming up at 3:30, Rutgers, Minnesota. Minnesota undefeated, ranked 20th in the country. James, let's start with the coaching search right now. Obviously, you, Keith Sargent, and Steve Politi have been polling pretty much everybody in and out of the state to kind of determine where everybody lies in their opinion of who should be the next Rutgers head coach. We've obviously heard Greg Schiano's name come up a lot. Joe Moorhead has been reported by you guys as being one of the top candidates now. What do you think about Joe Moorhead? But we'll get to Schiano in a little bit. But as far as Moorhead is concerned, he's a Penn State guy, Northeast guy. He's coaching at Mississippi State right now, struggling a little bit. What's your opinion? What's your take on Joe Moorhead as the possible next coach here in Piscataway?
Yeah, I think this is something that the minute Chris Ash was fired, it kind of got brought up. The idea that Joe Moorhead is a Northeast guy, Pittsburgh guy. I mean, we can kind of, I guess, drag the Northeast boards a little bit to count Pittsburgh, but he coached at Fordham, had success there as a head coach, offensive coordinator at Penn State. Obviously, he had Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley. I think you and I could probably have figured that out. And obviously went to Mississippi State. Just kind of a weird cultural fit. It happens in college football. I would think of like Sonny Dykes when he was at Cal, just a coach kind of going out of their comfort zone. He's a good coach, but maybe this doesn't mesh there. I mean, you can make an argument that Chris Ash was kind of a weird cultural fit for Rutgers. So I think when the search started, or when Ash was let go, people thought, Joe Moorhead went 8-5 last year. He's probably not going to be able to beat an Alabama and Auburn LSU this year. Maybe he goes like 8-5 again, and he reassesses, do I want to be here? Do I want my family back to a place where I'm more comfortable? Obviously, you reset your clock. A guy who comes to Rutgers is probably going to get 5 years at least, unless it becomes a complete disaster like with Ash. But now the fact that Mississippi State is losing, and they're 3-3, and they're going to get waxed by LSU today in all likelihood. They still got to play Alabama. Moorhead's had two kind of that awkward press conference later in the week where he's talking about his family and how the SEC kind of eats you up, and then the weird interview with Paul Feinbaum. I just wonder, it's one thing to have an iffy year and you think, okay, it was a bad situation. But when it gets really bad, how does that kind of damage him as a coaching candidate that you might have to sell as a hire to a fan base that overwhelmingly wants the other guy you mentioned, Greg Schiano? Yeah,
we'll go right into him, and it's kind of funny that Moorhead mentions the SEC can eat you up. Well, the Big Ten can do that to you, too, particularly with this job, considering there are expectations, but people just want respectability with the Rutgers football program, and I think respectability is something that a guy like Greg Schiano could bring in. Now, was I on the train to bring him back right away? No, but it's grown on me again. I've always loved Schiano, as every Rutgers fan does, but I've grown more accustomed to now thinking that Greg Schiano might end up being the best fit, at least in the immediate future for Rutgers, to at least get him back to maybe the 5-7s, the 6-6s, or the 7-5s, a couple bowl games, maybe the occasional upset. What is your take on Greg Schiano based on the conversations you've had with high school coaches, the fans, and the other members of the media?
I think a couple things. If you hire Greg, I've always said this, put the on-field stuff aside, that product for a second. Your off-field issues that you have, the disconnect maybe some high school coaches, the grassroots community feels, the fan base. Greg's going to sell season tickets. Greg's going to excite the fan base. Greg is probably going to inspire donors to donate money to some of the facilities they need, the things they need to do here. Greg's going to excite high school football coaches. He's going to excite high school kids. He's just going to create a buzz that Rutgers football has lacked. If Greg Schiano's the head coach, his first spring game, I bet you there's 20, 25, 30,000 people here. People are going to be excited. You're going to recoup some of that lost revenue with season tickets. And I think, look, in the history of Rutgers football, we are sitting here today with the Minnesota Golden Gophers on the field because of Greg Schiano. The stadium has expanded because of Greg Schiano. He gave modern Rutgers football its dignity. So, of course, people are going to say if he did it once, he can do it again when he's got, no matter how behind the rest of the Big Ten Rutgers might be in some areas, Greg's got better facilities, more money, Big Ten membership. He's got everything he didn't have when he had success back in the day. He now has. So I think people think, and the bottom line is this. Greg Schiano is a good football coach. He's a professional football coach. He's a guy who's had success. And I think a lot of people feel that no matter what, if Greg comes back here, he's a guy who can get them back to 6 wins every year, going to bowl games, pulling upsets, something like that. The program is in the abyss right now. I think people feel that the best bet, Greg Schiano might not have the highest ceiling in the world of some young hotshot coach, but he's at least going to pull them back up to not to prominence, but pull them back up to respectability.
I even saw a hire Schiano back now, sign back in the tailgate right there. Now, just sticking with Schiano real quick again here. we've heard a lot about Schiano just from the fan base. We haven't really heard many reports. I mean, you guys have dug into it a lot as well on NJ.com. We really haven't heard much from that side of things in terms of actual credibility that he is interested in the job. It's pretty much at least all I've heard. The fans want him back, and there's a big clamoring for him to come back to Piscataway. Is Schiano actually a realistic option? I feel like nobody's asking this question. Is he actually a realistic option to come back in 2020?
Yes, I think he is. I mean, look, I can't think of many coaching searches in the past where a guy who's a serious candidate has come out and said, I want the job, I want the job. Now, obviously, Rutgers is not going to tip their hand. Yes, everything I've heard is that Greg Schiano is a serious candidate. He will be in it till the end. He will be highly considered. Will it happen? Who knows? I mean, look, there's other jobs that might open around the country, too, that might have interest in Greg Schiano. Two of them I can think off the top of my head, not a guarantee. Boston College, Dazio's struggling there. I can see Greg being a fit there. How about South Florida? If Charlie Strong
loves
goes,
the South down there.
That's what I'm saying. So, yes, he's a realistic kid. I think we are way too far into this thing. No one's going to tip their hand or say anything definitively public. But I think this is not us just talking to talk. Fans, it's the real thing.
Now, you wrote an interesting piece the other week, and you were convincing me. And if people out there don't know what I'm talking about, James wrote a nice piece on Jeff Monken, the Army head coach. You are, I think, the only guy in the Northeast area that says Rutgers, triple option, shake it up, do something bizarre, and it might work. Tell us why you think Jeff Monken would actually be a good fit with Rutgers football, coming over from Army, bringing that triple option here to New Jersey.
Well, let's just look at the fact of the matter. Rutgers has struggled to recruit, top recruits for years now, and their pass offense has been abysmal for 4 years now. You bring in Jeff Monken, one, you don't throw the ball as much. You have something that's a pain in the neck for opposing defense to prepare for. And I think the biggest thing is those recruiting issues, he negates that. Because you're recruiting a totally different – you're not going after kids with stars that are choosing Penn State and Ohio State and Syracuse. You're not doing that. You're recruiting guys who their best offers – you're their best offer. These are guys who are great offensive linemen that are an inch too short. Halfbacks are a half step too, a quarterback who everybody else wants to turn into a safety, who's tough as nails. You do all that, and not only that, you tell these kids, you get to come here to Rutgers, be in the Big Ten, and get to play against all the schools that didn't pay you the time of day when you were in recruiting. So I just think if a guy like Monken, and look, he's not going to come here and just run the Army offense. He's going to adjust to his personnel. That's what these guys do. But he gives you an offensive identity, and he gives you a plan that you can kind of negate your struggles. And if you start to win, you're going to recruit better players, and then he might sort of mainstream, for lack of a better word, his offense a little bit.
That'd be pretty interesting considering not many teams run it. Basically, Army, Navy, Georgia Tech for a time ran it. You mentioned it before. We mentioned the reason why you were not on the air this a couple weeks ago due to the breaking news of Raheem Blackshear redshirting after he was out there for pregame warmups against Maryland. So him and Art Sikowski right now, they're sitting out. They plan the redshirt. You should not expect them to come back in any game this year, barring something absolutely crazy. What's your take on those two guys sitting out and making this decision? Blackshear obviously already played his 4 games. Art could still play one more and then redshirt. I mean, but does this align just simply because Ash was fired? Are these guys actually thinking about transferring out of the program no matter what happens, or are they taking the wait-and-see approach here?
I think it's a wait-and-see approach for both guys. I mean, I think they're two separate things. The issue with Sikowski is this. It's when they fired Chris Ash, they also fired John McNulty. And they gave Nunzio Campanelli all the power as offensive coordinator and interim coach and a mandate to fix the offense. He's clearly taken the offense in a direction that doesn't really fit Art Sikowski. And I think Art Sikowski looked at it and said, I don't really fit this offense. I'm not a guy who's really, yes, you can have some RPO in, but Art's not a guy who's meant to be pitching the ball and carrying the ball 15, 20 times a game. So I think he realized that where this is probably going. It's probably trending to a point where at the end of the day, Art was going to struggle in the offense, and they're going to go to Johnny Langan, who's also struggled himself in 2 games. So I think Art was just a wait-and-see situation. I think with Art, it's really going to come down to when a new head coach comes in, what is their offensive philosophy? And I think there's a lot of offensive coaches in the country that'll find a way to make it work with Art Sikowski. This scheme that Rutgers is running right now doesn't really fit him. But I would be kind of surprised if it's something that whoever the new head coach is goes with a scheme like this. But I think there's a lot of limitations unless you have the cream of the crop athletes with what Rutgers is doing right now. Blackshear is interesting. He's a junior. He's NFL draft eligible after this season. He's a guy who he could come back. I think he could go to the NFL. He could look to graduate and get in the portal and maybe go as a grad transfer for 1 year. I mean, Matt Millen, I think, said on a broadcast a couple of days ago, it'd be really fascinating to see what a guy like Raheem Blackshear could do, and Rutgers fans don't want to hear this, could do in a top 20, like at Ohio State. Like, what could he do in that sort of offense?
I was thinking the same thing. What if he goes to another Big Ten school and then he's used as a scat back, slot receiver,
not even a Big Ten school. I mean, he can just go to a school that at the top 25 caliber program, and he's featured in offense. So I think if you were to put odds on this in Atlantic City, which is obviously highly illegal, I would say that you probably the odds would be, you would think, as a thinking, logical person, that if a guy's redshirting this year, the way college football is going, chances are, better than not, that they won't be back in 2020. That being said, I think that I would say Art, I would feel a lot more comfortable saying, I think the path for Art staying is a lot wider and clearer than, say, the path for Blackshear staying. But I think it's wait and see. And look, they haven't let us talk to either kid. So it's hard for me to really kind of talk. I would love to hear what they have to say about this. But you know what? This is their right. They're student athletes. This is their right.
And they made the rule for a reason.
They made the rule for a reason. They only control so much as college athletes. They should be able to kind of look out for themselves. Because you know what? A lot of chaos has engulfed this program over the last few weeks. Why shouldn't they take a step back and say this is right for me?
James Kratch of NJ Advanced Media joining me right here on the College Football Countdown to Kickoff on 97.3 ESPN. Two more for you, James. Pat Hobbs said that he wants a coach that's going to contend for championships, win championships in terms of Big Ten. He wants to go to a Rose Bowl. I know you and I talked about this after he said that, after that press conference. You said, hey, I like a guy who at least is going to say that, because Rutgers really hasn't had a guy who does say, I want to go to Rose Bowl. What was your take on that Hobbs
statement? Yeah, I just want, now I've only been on the beat, this is my second season, but what I always struck about was that Chris Ash, I look at other Rutgers coaches. Scott Goodale wanted national champion wrestlers. He's got them, obviously. Steve Peichel wants to go to the NCAA tournament.
Good shot.
He's on his way to doing that, okay? All the other programs, we want to win Big Ten titles. We want to do this. There never was a goal for Rutgers football. Chris Ash talked about plans and processes and this and improvement, but at the end of the day, you got to win football games. And I just felt that, yes, the Rose Bowl is a long way away, and a lot of people are going to laugh at it, but at the same time, finally someone put an expectation on the football program. It's a lofty one, yes. I think that the first step would be to go 6-6 again. But you know what? I mean, you're in the Big Ten. You're trying to spend money. Of course, that's a goal. It's the goal in college football for every team except the cream of the crop. Be win your rivalry games, win your conference, see what happens next. So of course, if you're in the Big Ten, the Rose Bowl should be your goal.
Now, does this actually make or break his tenure? Because he's done. We know Hobbs has done well with every other sport, basically, at this university, except the big one, which is football, particularly now they're in the Big Ten. Does this next hire make or break his tenure?
I think so. Most ADs, if you're lucky as an AD, you get to hire a second football coach. You usually don't get to hire a third. And look, people don't like to hear it. This is what drives the bus. It's all about football here. You can win. You can have all these great, and they have great things happening in the other sports. But football struggling casts a pall upon the whole athletic department, the whole university. This is what the identity is derived from. So, yes, this is a big one for him.
I'll leave you here with this one. James Kratch of NJ Advanced Media joining me right here. Rutgers plus 29. Now, you can't bet Rutgers in New Jersey, even though we have sports betting across and, of course, down by us in Atlantic City. Rutgers plus 29 today. Do they cover against Minnesota today?
No. Where'd you get 29? It was 27.5 last time I checked. That's easy. It's a lot easier to take 27.5 than 29. No,
I saw the Vegas odds. I saw last night.
Some late money coming.
Late money.
They don't cover. I think this is a really good Minnesota football team. Don't look now. They're going to play. They're 6-0. They're going to play Rutgers today. Maryland next week. They're going to be in the Big Ten West.
Can you imagine a scenario where Minnesota's undefeated and they go to the Big Ten title game to play a team like Ohio State?
I mean, it'd be tremendous. I mean, this is the way I look at it, and I say this basically every week. I'm like a broken record. I know Minnesota's going to score points today, at least 30, given how bad this Rutgers is. I don't think Rutgers are they going to score a touchdown. I just can't see Rutgers scoring enough points to backdoor cover. So I'll say the Gophers win by at least 30 points.
All right, big thanks here to James Kratch of NJ Advanced Media. We're going to step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, you'll hear my 4-pack of picks today. 14-10 on the year, 3-1 last week. I will give, spoiler alert, my pick might be very similar to James in terms of this Rutgers game. So keep it locked here. You're listening to the College Football Countdown and Kickoff Show right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the College Football Countdown to Kickoff Show on 97.3 ESPN with your host, Nick Costco. We're taking you up to the kickoff of Rutgers football. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Nick Costco.
Back here on the College Football Countdown and Kickoff Show right here on 97.3 ESPN. Nick Costco with you live from SHI Stadium on the campus of Rutgers University. Got a couple more minutes, about 8 minutes to go before we leave it out or send it out to Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, and Eric LeGrand for the call of Rutgers, Minnesota, kicking off at 3:30. Minnesota, number 20 in the country, 6-0 on the year. Rutgers, well, they're not that good. We'll just leave it at that. So it's time now for our pick segment as we give a big thank you again to NJ Advanced Media's James Kratch for joining me in the last segment. Talked a lot about the Rutgers coaching search. I will have this show on demand at some point later tonight on my YouTube page as well, or as by tomorrow morning as well. You can catch out that interview. It's pretty much timeless at this point because the coaching search is going to be going on for another 6 weeks until we hit the end of the season. And again, Rutgers homecoming game today here against Minnesota. Rutgers wearing the very interesting and nice throwback type uniforms back from the 1869 days. The long sleeve jerseys, tan pants, white helmets, and the old school R. As before we give you our picks here, I will give you a scoring update on some of the scores that are going on in the top 25 around college football. Clemson, number 3 in the country, leads Louisville 37-3. Oklahoma, number 5 in the country, leads West Virginia 52-14. Number 6, Wisconsin, keeping it close. They're close with Wisconsin or with Illinois right now, 23-14 in the fourth quarter. Number 9, Florida, has taken the lead back from South Carolina, trying to avoid an upset. They're up 31-20. Just over 5 minutes ago in the fourth quarter. Auburn destroying Arkansas 44-10 right now. Iowa up on Purdue 26-13. And the rest of the top 25 games get set at 3:30 and also later tonight. All right, time for our picks. As, again, we always pick these against the spread. We pick the Rutgers game every week. 14-10 on the year. 3-1 last week. I was feeling good about myself, so we're going to do this again. And we're going to start out with Temple at Southern Methodist. And I'm thinking to myself, wait, Temple's an 8.5-point dog on the road to Southern Methodist. Who? I'll tell you what. Put that money on Temple today. I love the Owls. They are rolling right now. I'm still surprised that they are not ranked yet. They will have SMU later in the year. They are currently ranked, so that's going to be a big game for the Owls. Put your money on Temple here this afternoon. 8.5-point dogs at Southern Methodist. All right. Army at Georgia State, very interesting game. Army's a 5-point favorite on the road. Georgia State, historically, not really a good football program, and if you heard my conversation with James Kratch just a little bit ago, he loves Army, loves the triple option offense, loves head coach Jeff Monken. He makes the argument for him to be the next Rutgers head coach. Who knows if that ever will happen, but Army does run that triple option offense to give everybody fits. I do like Army today. Put your money on the Black Knights. Army -5 at Georgia State. So just to recap, we have Temple plus 8.5 and Army -5. Both teams on the road right now. Next game, and I mentioned this at the top of the show when I was previewing my top 3 matchups of the day. We'll go back to number 17, Arizona State at number 13, Utah. Basically a playoff elimination game if the Pac-12 has any hope of having a representative in the college football playoff here later this season. Arizona State plus 14 on the road. I know Utah could put up a lot of points in. Arizona State does have a freshman quarterback, but I find this line a little bit interesting. It's frankly, to me, it's a little ridiculous. I can't believe they're disrespecting Herm Edwards and the Sun Devils right now. And it may be just my tiny bit of bias because I watched, I mentioned before, I watched that 24/7 show on HBO where they follow a college football team each week. And they followed Arizona State in their game against Washington State at home. for some reason, I just fell in love with the Arizona State Sun Devils, and you're going to have to give me them and the points. Plus 14, Arizona State on the road. You're sensing a theme here. We're picking road teams here this afternoon. And just to remind you, all these games do kick off at 3:30 or later, so I'm not cheating, folks. All right, none of these games kicked off before I went on the air. None of these were noon games, so don't you worry. All right, we have Arizona State plus 14 at number 13, Utah. Do I necessarily think that Arizona State's going to win? I don't know. It's in Utah. Utah's a good football team. But I do like the Sun Devils today, so take them at plus 14 on the road at number 13, Utah. And finally, oh yes, we come to this one, the game that I will see in front of my very own eyes in person at my alma mater here at Rutgers University. Rutgers hosting Minnesota this afternoon in just about 20 minutes or so, as we'll send it out to Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, and Eric LeGrand for the Rutgers IMG broadcast right here on 97.3 ESPN. The number 20 Minnesota Golden Gophers are undefeated. PJ Fleck has this team rolling right now. Speaking of rolling, by the way, Eric LeGrand, the former Rutgers defensive tackle who was paralyzed about 9 years ago at this point, his number is retired by the Scarlet Knights. He has these T-shirts, these charity T-shirts that help out his foundation, among other things, called Role Model. They're Role Model T-shirts, and then they have his 52 on them. And roll is spelled R-O-L-L. That's a self-inflicted joke there from Eric LeGrand. He loves it, so it's called their Role Model T-shirts with this number 52 on the front. And P.J. Fleck of Minnesota, who is a former Rutgers assistant under Greg Schiano, he actually bought, this is very nice of him, he bought T-shirts for the entire Minnesota Golden Gophers football team to wear during the pregame warm-ups, and he bought Eric LeGrand's Role Model T-shirt. So a nice little shout-out to P.J. Fleck, the head coach of Minnesota, for doing that. That was a very nice gesture of him, and good to see the road team supporting Eric LeGrand. But role model or roll away today. It's going to be a runaway game here today for Minnesota. They are minus 29 on the road. Now, I was just talking off air with James Kratch and my other buddy Matt Howe, one of my former classmates who's hanging around here in the stadium. These guys saw the lines at minus 27.5, minus 28. Folks, I usually try to do these lines earlier in the week, around Wednesday, maybe in latest is Thursday. I looked at this last night, minus 29. People are putting money on Minnesota, and it was an interesting conversation I had with James and Matt. It was, Vegas must know something, but they also must be a little bit afraid here to just make this line even bigger. I mean, if you're Vegas, you might want to think that Minnesota could possibly go up 28-0 in the first quarter and maybe beat Rutgers today by, 35, 40 points even. But you're not going to set a line at minus 35. You're not going to set a line at minus 38, 41, 42, because it is Minnesota, and I know it's Rutgers, but it is Minnesota. You just don't know, and you're going to make that type of line for a road team? I don't think so. So smart by the boys in Vegas to make this minus 29 maximum here today. But just so you know, I am going with Minnesota because I don't think Rutgers is going to cover this line at all. And it's interesting, when I asked James about this in our last segment, I asked him, do they cover plus 29 today? And he said, well, I'm going to take Minnesota because the fact remains is they can cover that in the first quarter. It's a possibility. Now, you may think, all right, will they win 35-0, maybe 35-7? Sure, that's possible, but and then Rutgers would just cover the line at being at minus 29. They would cover it losing by 28. But here's the problem. He was going on the fact that, well, he doesn't trust Rutgers to score a touchdown. And frankly, I don't trust them either. They can't kick a field goal because they missed one against Maryland a couple weeks ago when that game was actually 7-7. But they lost. They only scored 7 points. They got destroyed. Am I confident that Rutgers can even score a touchdown against a good Minnesota? That was against Maryland, folks. They have to play Minnesota today. Don't forget, they still have to play Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan State left on the schedule. Ohio State's coming here. They have to go to Penn State. This is not going to be fun, folks. So does Rutgers cover today? Boy, I don't think so. So I'm going to take Minnesota minus 29 here to cover this afternoon. I think they're unfortunately roll over Rutgers. And again, for all Rutgers fans, members of the media, they're waiting for next season and I would say basically the offseason. Who are they going to hire? My money probably on Greg Schiano. He's probably the guy I want most now. As I said, over the past couple weeks, he might be the only option that I think is going to at least bring this program back up to respectability. All right, that's going to do it for me. Quickly, the pick recap: Temple plus 8.5, Army minus 5, Arizona State plus 14, Minnesota minus 29. Put your money on those 4 teams. Hopefully we're 4-0 going into next week. Big thanks to James Kratch of NJ Advanced Media joining me. Big thanks to producer Josh Hennig for pushing all the buttons back in studio. I'll be back next week live here from SHI Stadium at 11 a.m. as Rutgers takes on Liberty. We're going to send it out now to Chris Carlin, Ray Lucas, and Eric LeGrand for the call of Rutgers, Minnesota, kicking off at 3:30. I am Nick Costco saying so long. You have been listening to the College Football Countdown and Kickoff Show right here on 97.3 ESPN.